All right, everyone, welcome back into another NBA props betting video. We are going to be breaking down all the top prop bets in the NBA today on both PrizePicks and Underdog, but we are getting some pretty good edges for college basketball as well, which I'll touch on at the end of this video. Let's go ahead and get into it. And so let's start with really the top PrizePicks bet that we're getting in my eyes, given the edge that we're getting in comparison to the underdog line and the average sportsbook line. And that'd be Evan Mobley to get over 41.5 for his fantasy score. Now, the concern with this bet is that the Cavs are going to be 13.5 point favorites going against Washington, guys. So that's definitely a concern to me, but it is a higher scoring game. 240.5 is the over and under. So this is one of those bets that kind of like goes hand in hand. Like if the game total is actually going to end up being as high scoring as it's projected to be, then Evan Mobley should be part of the reason as to why that does occur. The issue is maybe when the blowout does occur. Okay, going against Washington, 12.5 points is a lot. That's firmly in blowout range. And so that's a little bit of the risk, and maybe he ends up being able to middle. Honestly, with the line that we're getting on Underdog, 44, it's obviously off by like 3.5 here, guys. That should not be happening. So a slight chance for that to middle, but overall, this ends up being a pretty solid bet that we're getting on PrizePicks. And then, guys, we're going to pivot on into Underdog here. And I'm just going to highlight some of my favorite bets there because we are getting some what I view as pretty darn good edges. So we'll start with Alfred Sengun here, where, again, this ends up being a pretty big prop line difference. Okay, so he's at 41.9 on Underdog, whereas the PrizePicks line is at 45.5. And so, again, I'm just showing you guys this on PrizePicks just because I like their graphic a little bit better. But, I mean, just quite clearly he's been going off here, guys. And so the PrizePicks line might be correct here at 45.5, but the Underdog line is just clearly wrong at 41. And so although it has, what was it, like a 52% likelihood for it to hit, I think that just ends up being a bet that we want to get to a decent amount. And then actually, guys, in this same game, we're getting Wemby as a potential middle bet. I haven't really decided which side I like it better on. And he's actually someone I'll show you guys on the PrizePicks optimizer right now. I think if we're betting on Wemby, and this is a bet that I made, is I'm just going to bet him on both sites and hope that he does end up hitting the middle. The average sportsbook line has it as more of a middle. The projection data at 53, but slightly favoring the over there as well, like literally 53.05 compared to 53. The Underdog line at 56.4 is definitely too high, but we are getting some pretty big prop line differences in this game in general. And then another one, this is definitely one of my favorite bets on Underdog today, guys. Kevin Durant to get over 37.4 for his fantasy score. So all the data points are telling us to bet the over. The PrizePicks line is at 40.5. The average sportsbook line, 40.8. Projection data at almost 42. And again, I'll just show you guys his snapshot on PrizePicks. Just again, I like the format a little bit better there. I am working on getting a version of this available on the 9to5 Sports website where it's just a little bit cleaner, easier to present the data. That is something I hope to have done in the next week or so. That will operate similarly to this, but it'll just be an expansion of it. We'll try to get some game logs in there as well. But anyways, guys, what we're going to notice here is that he has gotten the over of the Underdog line a lot recently throughout the last 5 games. And so maybe this does end up being a middle. Now, I will say the one concern that I have about this line in general is the low scoring game nature of this game. 223.5 is the game total. So very low scoring game. But overall, I do think KD, although it could be a sweat, I think this ends up being a pretty solid bet for us as well on Underdog. And then we get into Banchero, guys. So I do like his over fantasy score here of 40.4 on Underdog. Again, the PrizePicks line, I mean, this is insane. It's at 45 on PrizePicks. That is insane. This is definitely a bet that I think we should be running a middle out on. And I'm sure most of you guys have already watched the first NBA betting video that I put out for the day today, which kind of covered my favorite early bets. And Banchero to get over 36.5 PRA was one of them. But like given the line that we're getting on PrizePicks, guys, like that's basically the same bet, if not better. Okay. And we see he's been crushing lately. Maybe you could argue he's due for a bad game here against Boston, a game that is projected to be a little bit lower scoring than I would like, 226.5. But there's no blowout risk. It's only a 3.5 point spread. And so I do really like that over for Banchero of about 40. I mean, that shouldn't be happening. So we're getting some pretty massive edges there. And we're also getting one more. We are also getting Giannis to get over his fantasy score. Now, not as big of a prop line difference, but in comparison to really the average sportsbook line, it is. And so it's kind of checking all the boxes. And I do think that ends up being a pretty good bet for us to get to on Underdog. And so I do want to jump into the Underdog by the day here real quick. And then we're going to jump into some college basketball prop bets because we're not necessarily getting... Well, we'll do NBA, and then we'll get into college basketball prop bets. We're just not getting that many more NBA bets that I necessarily want to go out of my way to target, but the optimizer is pulling in some good bets there. So just, again, real quickly, guys, very solid prop line differences. Basically, all of these are bets that you could run out the unders on, or the opposite, I should say, on PrizePicks because we got Wemby here where his is at 53. Honestly, let me know in the comment section about Wemby if you guys like his over or under, which site you like better for that, because I don't really have a good feel. I do feel like these are bets that I would have wanted to make anyways. You know, the overs for these four. The Wemby one, I'm a little bit adrift on, so let me know which one you guys like the most there with him. So yeah, guys, we just looking at the NBA prop bets we're getting. So we got Reed Shepherd for under his fantasy score, 17.5. That's a decent bet that's popping up. Jalen Smith for under his fantasy score, not a terrible bet. Jalen Suggs for under his fantasy score. So we have three pretty decent ones in comparison to how PrizePicks sees the game going. And I don't mind any of them, but to me personally, they're not necessarily bets I feel like we need to go out of our way to target, if that makes sense. So definitely solid bets overall, but not necessarily bets I feel like we need to go out of our way to target. And then Garland's interesting. I do want to call him out. So he's someone that at 26.5, I do think this ends up being a pretty good over bet here for him. This one has a 53.10% likelihood for it to hit. He's someone that, and let's pull up his game log here. In his first game back, guys, had 28 minutes. Now, he didn't do much, 3 for 11, 4 assists, 2 rebounds, but I'm really hanging my, 26 minutes. I'm really hanging my hat on his 26 minutes. And if we look at the projection data, he's at 32 minutes. And so I do end up liking this one a decent amount there as well. And so a little bit of a game side there, honestly, is with him and Evan Mobley, you could stack together for their overs, and I think that ends up being a good route to go there. Then worth calling out, guys, we are getting a Ja Morant, big prop line difference between how the average sportsbook line values him, and like a 1 for a prop line difference between underdogs. So did want to call that out. But let's go ahead and jump into college basketball. And it's going to be pretty simple, guys. What I like, this line's already been bumped. This line's already been bumped just as an FY. But I like these fantasy score ones that we're getting. So Mac for over his fantasy score here, a very big prop line difference between how the average sportsbook line is looking at that one. Seth Trimble for over his fantasy score, 23. That ends up being a good bet, especially in comparison to how Underdog is valuing them as well. So those two are two pretty darn good edges for college basketball. We continue on, guys. We got Henry as well for over his fantasy score, 24.5. So another pretty good bet there. But let's actually just take a peek at these fantasy score bets where we are getting underdog lines with as well, because we are getting some prop line differences there. So we got Evans for over his fantasy score. Again, like the average sportsbook line agrees with that. The projection data does not, but still ends up being a pretty good bet for us. 52.2% likely for that to hit. We also have Peterson, which if you wanted to bet on his over, you'd obviously do it on Underdog. Slight prop line difference there, though. And then Caleb Wilson as well, guys. So this is another one where, basically checking all the boxes. Only a 51.2% chance for this one to hit, but overall, not a bad bet there as well. And so I really like a lot of the bets that we're getting here, guys. So this would be like a plus EV bet just naturally with a lot of the college basketball bets. 0.4% edge on PrizePicks, about a 5.3% likelihood for this to hit. So not terrible there. I think that ends up being a pretty solid bet for us. And we are getting some stacking opportunities, which for me does increase the likelihood for it. I don't know if we necessarily want to go in on 4 Carolina players. That's kind of my concern there. And so this will be my official PrizePicks bet of the day then. Just a 5 slip bet, trimming it down slightly just because I didn't want to get a 4th North Carolina player. Could attach Wemby for over his fantasy score if you guys like that. I do think we're going to get more college basketball fantasy scores today and also for tomorrow as well. Typically speaking, guys, college basketball Saturdays are massive edges for us. So be on the lookout for those. And if you guys aren't a 9to5 member yet, make sure to sign up, guys. All the tools available on the website are available for a low monthly cost of $10 a month. Again, I priced it that way for you guys so you don't have to spend a lot of money on prop betting tools. You guys can just spend your time doing the research pretty much. So again, all the tools available on the website, $10 a month. Head on over there. You guys can head on over to the pricings and plans tab to get access to those tools. That's going to do it, guys. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you guys being here. Good luck with all your bets today and also tomorrow. That'll do it. Thank you guys for watching. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.